Hello everyone, this is Jimmy and welcome to episode 16 of Project Ozone 3. Today I would like to get further down pneumatic craft, using the power of compressed air to do things. So right now we have our air compressor set up with a safety feature that'll turn it off before it explodes. It's very good. Let's continue then by building the pressure chamber. Let's see, here it is. So the pressure chamber is just like it's a new crafting mechanic in pneumatic craft that lets you make things by shoving them in, a area of high pressure. So these all look like the vanilla recipes. Oh, this one definitely isn't. But we don't technically need glass. Anyways, I'm going to make this stuff, even though I don't think we need quite this many walls or glasses. Alright, first bottleneck. We need a new machine. The pressure chamber wall takes extreme alloy. Dun dun dun. Which can only be made in a nuclear craft alloy furnace. It can't be made in, a smeltery or the other alloy furnace. So, good news is, I don't think this requires any more progression. We just have to craft one. It's one of those very nasty, heavily nested recipes. Blech. Literally minutes of going through and micro crafting later, we have an alloy furnace. So as far as I know, this is just like any other machine. Let's make some room for it here, where you give it RF and then you put items in and it spits items out. So I'm curious what the value was in not adding this recipe to the other alloy smelters, but sure. I see how this works. Okay, well, now that we have our alloy smelter, we can make the extreme alloy. So the alloy furnace doesn't automatically push or pull items, and when I'm dealing with machines that don't do that, sometimes I just like to use these flat transfer nodes. If you place them on the side of a machine, they fit. They actually don't take up space. Like you can put, your crates around it as usual, and then you can configure the flat transfer node to either push or pull items on behalf of the machine. So when you place the node down, if you're just placing it, I think it's in pull mode, and if you Alt or Control right click, it's in push mode. And quick correction, it's if you Control click to place it, the green side is shows the input side, and the red side is the output side. So these two are still reversed. And to take them off, just left click it with another flat transfer node in your hand. It's a little confusing, the system, but they're very convenient blocks to use. So the nuclear craft alloy furnace also takes these upgrades, speed and energy upgrades. You want to put as many energy upgrades as you have speed upgrades in. So right now, with an equal number of upgrades, it's 1300 RF a tick. If I take these out, it's 85,000. So you definitely want your energy upgrades, and they're very cheap in this pack. Crush obsidian, nether quartz from sifting, gold, and likewise. So anyways, now that I've put these upgrades in, I realize our item transfer is not remotely fast enough to keep up, so we're going to tear it all down and build it faster. Well, now this machine stands out unlike all the other ones, but nothing can be done about that, I think. I can think of no like 0 block transport that's fast enough. I'm also running half of these in the wrong direction. That's what I get for recording when I'm tired. So anyways, now let's see how fast this is. There we go. So now the output IO can keep up with the machine. So it still uses a lot of energy, but I mean it's fast. Actually, I wonder, we can do most alloys in here. So this is probably significantly faster than we can do block form. This is probably significantly faster than the Ender IO alloy smelter. Cool. So the quest book says we can either build it 3x3 or 5x5. Personally, I prefer to build them 3x3, although honestly the difference is pretty insignificant. So anyways, the bottom layer of your you know what, let's build it in the ground. The bottom layer of your pressure chamber, actually no, let's build it on the ground, will always be solid walls. So 3x3 of walls. And likewise, the top layer will also be a 3x3 of walls. So let's get enough to do that. And then it's a middle layer where the interesting things go. And the middle piece will always be hollow. Alright, so next we need to fill in the middle. Each pressure chamber needs at least 2 interfaces, one to put items in, one to put items out. I suppose technically you don't need interfaces, but if you don't have interfaces, it's pretty awkward to actually use the thing. So when you place it down, you see one side has I, one side has O. You want, let's see, I want it facing the other way. The I is input, O is output, if that wasn't obvious. So I want, let's see, yeah, this way items come in on this side, get processed, and then come out to this side. Next you need, so those are your 2 interfaces. You need at least 1 valve. The valve is where pressure, goes in or comes out. Since we'll probably at some point want a valve on this side, just so pressure can continue going to other places. In fact, I'll even put that valve there for now. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to seal this side off. So you can kind of seal pneumatic craft pipes by building like a box with them. Because if this wasn't sealed, pressure would leak out this valve. Lastly, we have to fill in the corners. The corners also have to be walls. And I suppose if we want to see what's going on, we can replace the top one with a piece of glass. So we can, look down into it and see what's going on. And lastly, let's hook it up to our air pressure. So you hear that hissing sound? That's the sound of pressure leaking. If you hear that sound, that means you have a leak in your system. Otherwise, well, you don't have a leak in your system. Good job. So anyways, this pressure now has an internal volume of 1600 milliliters, which as our compressor only has a volume of 5,000 milliliters. So that means that this pressure chamber can hold a lot more air than just the compressor and its pipes can. Now what we can do is, when you craft, you lose a little bit of air, right? Because you have to open and close all these valves, and each time you do it, it vents some of the air. You can increase the virtual volume inside with upgrades. Specifically volume upgrades, and these I like to stack my my pressure chamber with a lot of these, because what does it do? It doesn't say an exact amount, but I think it increases the effective internal volume without changing the amount of air you lose when you open or close the valves. So think of it in terms of like stored energy. You increase the amount of energy you can store, but you don't increase the amount of energy you lose for actions. Anyways, let's craft some of these. I hope it doesn't have to be a filled air canister. I guess we'll find out. Of course, it's not that easy. Making these requires air canisters, and even the empty air canister requires thermal conducting alloy, which is made in an alloy furnace with that extreme alloy, and boron arsenide, which is made in an ingot former from molten boron arsenide, which is made in a chemical reactor with molten boron and molten arsenic, yada yada yada. So I'm going to have to make, let's see, we're going to need at least a melter for the arsenic, a melter for the boron, assuming I have a source of boron. Let's see. Yeah, I think I have boron ingots, right? Yeah, we do. All right, that came from the deep dark. So yeah, we're going to need, I guess, 2 melters and a chemical reactor and a whatever ingot former. Wow, that's a lot of machines just to make this. And even that is more difficult than it looks. So all of these machines are, I guess, like tier 2 nuclear craft machines. So they take a full-blown machine chassis, which I've gone through this recipe. I think we're almost there with the exception of this plutonium. Normally this comes from extreme reactors, so you have to run a reactor and then get the cyanite out of it, which you can then reprocess into plutonium. But for one, I don't see the usual like cyanite reprocessor, so I actually don't think that's a valid way to get it. We can still turn yellorium into cyanite in an extreme reactor if that's what we want to do, but for the time being, we can make cyanite just by reacting or crafting yellorium with sand. So looking at the actual recipes for plutonium, then the only way to make it that I see, anyways, that isn't just smelting the dust back, is in the fluid transposer using Erebus formic acid. So I think this is much more efficient in block form. But one bucket does one block of cyanite. So we're gonna have to go back to the Erebus, get some formic acid, make our plutonium, then we can make our machine chassis, then finally we can make our nuclear craft machines. This is quite a rabbit hole we're going down today. Thankfully, I had previously found some formic acid, at least I'm pretty sure that's what this is, in the Erebus. It tends to stand out in the map because it has this like deep bluish color. So let's work our way there. Alright, that's what this stuff is. So I made a reservoir from thermal. I also enchanted it with soulbound and auto smelt. I wonder how auto smelt works in this. I suspect it doesn't. But anyways, you can just set it to input mode and then spam right click to suck stuff up for now. Later we get access to pumps if we need to automate the gathering of this stuff in huge quantities. But for now, if I just suck up 100-ish blocks, I'm sure that's enough to get us started. So now that we have all of our machines, a rock crusher and all these things, step one is to crush andesite down for... I was hoping to get a little bit more than that. Arsenic. So arsenic is a 1 in 3 drop, if I'm understanding what this means. Or 3 in 10, sorry. A 0.3% or 30% chance drop from crushing down andesite. So don't go crushing andesite in your day-to-day lives. Anyways, so that'll produce our arsenic. Step 2 then is to, let's see, we have to melt that. So let's get a couple melters. And here's the assembly line. So I took a look. I think the ratio of inputs is, let's see, to make 1 ingot of, or 1 gem of boron arsenide, whatever that is. It requires 1 ingot of boron and 1 gem of arsenic. I don't know why gems decided to be 666 millibuckets, but anyways, so I hope it's just put boron in this smelter, arsenic in this smelter. They come here, get reacted, and then I have fluid conduits back here, just moving stuff around as you'd expect. That's a lot of particles for a machine to be thrown off. Are you sure that's like industrial tier? That's safe? Especially when working with arsenic. Anyways, that creates our boron arsenide, which now we have to take and react with extreme alloy. Let's do 16 for now, I guess. In our alloy furnace to make thermal conducting alloy. So with this stuff, we can finally start making air canisters. And I know I could have put it off a little bit. Oh, I wonder, I can make a liquid compressor already. I guess that doesn't get us anywhere, never mind. I could have put off making the air canisters because we don't need volume upgrades, but soon enough we're going to need to make the Amadron tablet, and when we make that, we're going to need the air canister anyway, so we can't really put this off forever. So anyways, let's start crafting. Alright, so good news is it does accept empty canisters as well. So let's make 8 for now. And when we put them in the pressure chamber, let's take a look. So right now, the volume is 1,600 milliliters, or 16,000 milliliters. Each one adds 5,000 milliliters, it seems. So we've effectively, like a little over tripled the amount of effective volume, which means it basically makes this like a bigger battery. Cool. So let's move on. So now that we have our pressure chamber up and running, and it is being pressurized, you can see that our poor little air compressor, it's doing its best to, build up pressure in this system. But we're going to want to make some speed upgrades to make this faster soon. Anyways, the main purpose of the pressure chamber is to craft things like capacitors and transistors. In fact, if we look at the recipes, so we can make compressed iron losslessly. We'll have to make etching acid later. Oh, apparently it can enchant. That's cool. I didn't know. So it can stand in for an anvil when enchanting. It can make antimatter. Actually, I have a nice use for this, but we don't need it yet. But as I was saying, the main uses is for transistors and capacitors, and PCBs, I guess. So anyways, to make capacitors and transistors, we need plastic, among other things. I think the plastic is the only thing right now that we absolutely cannot make. Some of this will be difficult to make in bulk, but we can do it. So, plastic is made in a plastic mixer with the various dyes with liquid plastic. Liquid plastic is a trip. So to get liquid plastic, we have to refine liquefied petroleum gas from a thermopneumatic processing plant, and this is made in a pneumatic craft refinery out of oil, and it refines into diesel, kerosene, fuel, and LPG, and I think all of these three, diesel, kerosene, and fuel, can be upconverted into LPG. So all this requires air pressure and heat. So let's, I guess, make our refineries. Oh dear God, please don't be hard to make. Okay, I think as long as manganese is not difficult to get, we should be good. And all I'm seeing is manganese is a rare byproduct when processing tungsten in a crusher. I hope we have enough tungsten. Alright, we have 7,000 pieces of tungsten, so let's just process some of that in the crusher that we made earlier. Our base is getting a little laggy. I think a lot of it is, I tried to do something with this portal that didn't work, so I think it looks really cool, but it's very laggy. So I'll take that down in a bit. But for now, let's throw this in here. And hopefully, I think it was like a 10% chance. That was 8 stacks of tungsten. That'll give us a little bit of that manganese. Thankfully, it looks like it doesn't take much manganese to make this. I think 8 pieces of manganese is enough to make 4 stacks of HSLA, and I hopefully will not be going through 4 stacks of this stuff. I don't even know what it's really for. Coils and turbines, I guess. I've never done the nuclear craft turbines, so I'm actually not quite sure how that entire mechanic works. Anyways, now that we have this though, we can make refineries, which is what we were initially after. So, like the tooltip on the refinery here says, when you sneak, either 2, 3, or 4 refineries need to be stacked, and the more the merrier, effectively. So we're going to use 4. It also says the more heat you apply, the faster it runs. So let's stack 4 of them. You literally just place 4 of them on top of each other, and you want to supply the bottom. I think the bottom one has to be supplied with the input fluid, which will be oil, which I haven't quite figured out where I'm getting it from yet. But the other thing that this needs is heat. So right now all we have is air pressure. We don't have heat. What we can do though is use these vortex tubes. So when you place a vortex tube down, you see how it has two sides. One is, well, when you first place it down, you see it. One is red, one is blue. Those are the hot and cold sides, respectively. So I forget when I placed it. So I want it facing this way. What they do is, by using air pressure, vortex tubes are able to generate a heat differential. So, you know, a hot side and a cold side. And this can be used either to heat things up or to cool things down. For now, we're using it to heat things up. So let's see if I can get this placed right. I think they can also be turned with a wrench. Yeah. So now, when we apply air pressure to these vortex tubes, they'll heat our refinery. And I think all we have to do that is, yeah, they only take input out the top. No, we can't actually have all four vortex tubes hooked up because we need fluid input and output somewhere, right? We have to put fluid in the bottom and take fluid out the other places. So let's stick with 3. And you see, just by applying some air pressure to these, they're now the hot side is much hotter and the cold side is much colder. We're fast approaching absolute zero on the cold side, which, I mean, what is it, like minus 217 is absolute zero? Anyways, so now this is warm enough to work, but we need to get our we need to get our fuel. The other thing is we can insulate our refinery to improve its effectiveness. So right now, you know, all the sides are leaking heat, but I think if we just use, like, I think wood is a good insulator, albeit perhaps a slightly ugly one. We can just cover the sides that we don't, you know, need to use for like piping and stuff in wood, and we can see now it no longer complains that it's poorly insulated, and it gets even hotter. This side obviously we'll have to use for piping, so we can't cover it. So for now, let's figure out a way to get our oil. Ways to get oil. One is to make a Madron tablet and trade emeralds for it. 1 emerald gets you a bucket of oil, and then 1 bucket of oil can be, you know, turned into a lot of stuff. But to make the Madron tablet, we need plastic. So that creates a bit of a, you know, chicken or egg, right? We need oil to get the tablet. We need the tablet to get oil. That's not going to work. The other way is we can do it in a immersive engineering refinery with nutrient distillation and biodiesel. This, let's see, is made with any meat and sugar type stuff. That's not bad. But it requires setting up a refinery, a way to make this, which is a second refinery, plant oil and ethanol. It's like 30,000 million steps that I don't want to do because we've gone down enough rabbit holes today. So my plan is I want to use the Madron tablet for oil, but as you see, or as you saw, we need plastic first. So that means we just need a little bit of oil to kickstart this process. I'm hoping that we can find some world gem in either Landia or Lost Cities or something, and or maybe even the Deep Dark. I think I saw some in Landia though, so let me go and double check. Not Landia, the Deep Dark. Here in the Deep Dark, there's crude oil. I wonder if that's an acceptable alternative. The thermal foundation crude oil can be processed all the same. Perfect. All right, so let's I think I can, you know, let's get some of this oil shell. I think I can also process this into oil. Where that gives bitumen. Can that be like extracted into oil? In a magma crucible, this can be turned into oil. But let me just grab as many buckets of this crude oil as I can by hand, and we'll see if that's enough to kickstart our production. So I cleared out that oil vein, and we got 96 buckets of oil. I think that'll be enough for us to get started. All right, now we've got our oil source hooked up to our refinery, but we no longer have enough heat. And I think that's what happened is our vortex tubes used up all of our stored air pressure, and now we don't have enough air pressure to run them. So let's see, what can we do about that? I went ahead and set up a few more air compressors. I also hooked them up to our little safety loops so that we can't, they're unlikely to cause explosions. I think the ideal long-term solution is to use speed upgrades, but speed upgrades from pneumatic craft take lubricant, which we're going to eventually make out of this refinery. So anyways, now that we have 4 compressors running, hopefully in a minute that'll produce enough air pressure that we can start running our refinery. We're approaching the 100-degree mark where it'll start working. I also went ahead and insulated the sides we'll eventually extract from, just to speed this up. So, oh come on, don't get hung up at 99. Okay, I think it's what it processes. It takes a little bit of the energy. So, anyways, now you see we're producing all of these outputs. Sweet. Now, I did mention that we make lubricant in here. How do we make that? We make it out of diesel. I guess the alternative is once we have a Madron tablet, we can buy it, which is probably easier. Okay. Anyways, so now that we have our refinery up and running, if only barely, let's let it run a little bit to produce all of these resources. And my plan for now is to process it all into LPG. And here is the rest of our thermochem processing. So let's start from the refinery. First, all the various outputs of the refinery are being extracted. They're all on one conduit line, but because of the beauty of channels and Ender Ender fluid conduits, we can extract multiple fluids on one conduit. So first, diesel goes into this thermopneumatic processing plant, where I decide I'm going to combine it with redstone to make lubricant. Lubricant then, when it's done, will be extracted on the white channel and stored into this drum. And there's a bunch of redstone to feed into here. Cool. Next we have kerosene, which is being extracted here on the blue channel, which we can see comes from the refinery. So kerosene comes in on the blue channel to this thermopneumatic processing plant, which refines it down into fuel, which combines it with the rest of our fuel, which then gets processed down into LPG. And that's our stopping point for the time being. So now that we have this, all we have to do is hook it up to air pressure. As long as we're generating enough air, which I hope we are, we should be good to go. So let me find where I can hook this in. Let me just run this over. Now, I've accidentally vented a lot of air in the process, so I don't know if these will be able to get hot enough to start this process. Well, let's find out. So it doesn't look like we're going to reach the 100 degrees it takes to kick this process off. So we're going to help it along. Actually, if we give it enough time, it might, but I'm an impatient person. You can take any heat source, so say a bucket of lava, and place it next to the machine that needs heat, and it'll give it a good amount of heat. It'll give it a lot of heat. The only reason I'm not doing this everywhere is that over time, this lava will be turned into obsidian. So then, after a little bit, we're going to have to pick up the obsidian and then replace it, So these other machines, I'm not going to start them off quite yet, I think, because they require a much higher temperature to run. So anyways, oh wow. This has gotten hot. Anyways, let's see, what was I saying? So now that this is making lubricant, let's extract always. Oh, is that all the lubricant, all that we've made so far? 3 buckets? Well, now that we have 3 buckets of lubricant, at least we can make, we can start making speed upgrades. Once we have a few speed upgrades, we can improve our the amount of air we generate with our compressors, and that should make our lack of heat problem go away in a jiff. So with our first 3 speed upgrades, I think the more you, how do I describe this? They stack exponentially. So with 3 of them, we want to put them in the same machine to get the most effect. So with 0 speed upgrades, they're generating 10 milliliters of air pressure a tick. With 3, it's 34. So that's 3.5 times as much. So anyways, once we get a few more than that, we can probably take down the rest of these air compressors. It also, unfortunately, does make it, burn fuel faster. It's not free per se. Actually, I don't know if it's linear, like if the amount of air you get per unit fuel stays the same or not as you add more upgrades. I suspect that you start losing fuel. So, anyways, you see what I mentioned earlier about the lava that was here is now hardened into obsidian. So we have to pick it up, and if we want to, this will slowly cool down. But if we want to give this machine another kickstart later, we'll have to throw another piece of, some more lava there. And in an attempt to try to kickstart our refinery, I've also been feeding it some obsidian. I mean, some lava. So I have an idea. If lava makes it faster, how does blazing pyrothea make it a lot faster? Now, the problem with lava wasn't that it wasn't hot enough, right? It was that it would cool down into obsidian. Since I don't think blazing pyrotheum cools down into anything, can we just use this as our heat source? Wait, nope, it cools down into obsidian as well. Well, darn, so much for that idea. Now, as our system heats up, we see these machines are now above the 300-degree mark, but they don't yet have enough pressure to do their work. And the problem I'm noticing is that the machines that are very far from our pressure sources aren't getting, enough air. So what's happening is these compressors are generating, especially this one that has the speed upgrades in it, are generating a fair amount of air. And it's at 2.6 bar here, but as it goes through these more pipes and more things, like you see it slowly drops off, and by the time we get all the way to the end, we're down to 1.4. So what I'm thinking is maybe we can either add another set of pumps closer on this side, closer to our energy consumers, or separate this set, like the processing stuff, off into its own air section and give it its own pump. Either way, though, I think that'll involve setting up a handful of pumps and another one of those safety loops over here somewhere. And here it is, the last step to making plastic. So we have to take our LPG, react it with coal, and give it a little heat. This operation does not take any pressure, and it makes liquid plastic. So once we have liquid plastic, all we need is a plastic mixer, which is very easy to make, and we can start making plastic sheets. So let's get this. Thinking, let's see, how do we want to do this? We probably want a large-ish plastic buffer. So let me make a drum as well to hold. Let's put the drum here, plastic mixer here. And once we get it all hooked up, we can start making the plastic sheets, which unlock the rest of Pneumaticraft. The plastic mixer needs to be supplied with 3 colors of dye, specifically red, green, and blue dye. It'll consume them in rather small quantities to make all the colored sheets. Takes 1 bucket to make one of any individual sheet, and let's see, it accepts heat, but you don't need heat unless you're planning on remelting colored sheets down. So like if I make black plastic and I want to melt it later, I do need to supply heat to our mixer. But since I think I'm only going to make the colors that I need, I'm not going to bother. So the quest book, for one, wants us to make every color, and I'll probably make 1 sheet of every color just for the quest. In fact, let's grab, I'm out of crates. Well, let's make 1 of each. So to make it, you just click the color, and if you want to make more than 1, you click lock first, and it'll keep making that until it's out of plastic. So anyways, yeah, I'm glad we were able to get around to making plastic today. We, as usual, had to take a couple detours, but I guess that's par for the course of this pack. Let's plan on ending this episode here. We'll come back tomorrow and put our, oopsies, I already made one of those, and put all this infrastructure to use, making transistors and capacitors and the like. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. And yes, before any of you guys correct me, I forgot my heat sinks earlier. Put your heat sinks on the cold side of your vortex tubes, and the hot side will get a lot hotter.